reviewed again, and it was noticed that, hey, there's a potential issue here, and those pavement areas had to come off, because we didn't request variances for those pavement areas, and it was noticed that they were within the wetlands setback, they had to come off. So we took them off and adjusted the plan accordingly, and so this is the adjusted plan that you have in front of you now. Okay. Steve, if you could just give us a general overview of the site.
So this is, if you're not quite familiar, this is Shattuck Way. Stoneface Brewery is down here next to Rockland Electric. Coming back up this way, Patterson Lane is right over here. There's a 5.7 acre parcel. There was an existing building right here at the corner of River Road and Shattuck Way. It's a gravel laydown area now. It had been used for Eversource for a while, had been updated and graded, detention ponds and everything else on the site. So the area that you're looking at here for this building would be the relocation of Stoneface to this site, 24,000 square foot building, and then rehabbing, or actually building a new building at the other location. That's where you have two principal buildings. The site is, like I said, 5.7 acres. You got 1,300 feet of frontage around the site as well. And so variances.
Could I just,
Too fast.
I thought it was 1,600 feet on the.
Well, 1,300 square feet on, 1,300 linear feet on the Shattuck Way.
Oh, on Shattuck Way.
1,800 square feet, 1,800 linear feet around the entire thing. So almost 2,000 feet of frontage on Shattuck and River Road.
In land area,
5.7 acres.
okay, and the requirements for the office district?
Yes, yep, exceeds that.
120,000 square feet per lot. So we've got twice the requirement.
He's leading me on. So the point we're trying to make is that you need 120,000 square feet for a lot in this zone. We well exceed that. So one of the issues that we had talked about was you have enough land area for a couple of lots here, and we're just trying to keep them all consolidated into one because they're a single use for the lot, and that's why the variance would be requested as well. I don't want to go through the variances, you'll go through those.
Yes. Yeah.
In terms of the setbacks, what we had done, the rationale for the setbacks was again to utilize as much of the land area as possible. One of the things you'll note on the plan, the one that you have in front of you here, is that because you have River Road and you have Shattuck Way, there's a 75-foot building setback from both of those, and that what you're looking here is this dashed line would be the building setback. So there's just inherent in the lot itself, because of the configuration of the lot, the location of the lot, you have a lot of land area that's taken by setbacks, as well as the wetland buffers that you have here, which are 25-foot no cuts and 50-foot no disturb as well, vegetated buffers. So in general, what we're looking at here is about 160 parking spaces to 165 parking spaces to accommodate these two buildings for relocation of Stoneface from down the street.
You see, did you prepare a plan to show the buildable area of the lot?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
This is for you guys as well. Just, if you don't mind, just pass that on. So what this exhibit is looking to show you guys is if you apply all of the zoning setbacks that you have in town relative to both building setback and wetland setbacks, what you're left with is just the white areas that are actually available for construction and constructing a facility. So on a 5-acre site, we start out with a total area of 248,000 square feet of lot area, and once you apply all these setbacks, you only come up with 94,000 square feet of buildable land area. And so the exhibit that you're looking at right now is kind of showing you that, where you can kind of see if you're applying all the zone overlay issues, and that's part of this conversation as well. So that's what this map is kind of showing you guys, is what you end up with without asking for any relief. Any questions on that?
Did you I had 175 parking spaces when I did a rough count.
You did. I just, when I start thinking, I have to add this plus this over here as well. So
Right.
75, yeah.
I don't even know if that included that, I thought that'd be 181, so I was just curious if that was, so you're going with 165, or?
No, we're gonna get as many as we can on the site.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so you're going for the,
We're gonna go for as many as we can. It meets the requirement for your minimum max as well. And Pete and Errol can talk to you about in terms of what their ultimate goals are for the business, and I think they have, if you guys are familiar with Stoneface, they do pretty well.
Well, and one of the problems, Bob, that we have is, you know, our parking standards are generic, they're just based on industry standards, and, you know, if you have a restaurant that's a crazy success, you know, the parking standards that fit a national model don't necessarily work, so I think the planning board, will probably, encourage more spaces than we typically require, because I think we all think that this is gonna be a successful operation, and
right, I was just curious about the,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
see the
So I
application,
think-
I just did a count, because I
Yeah,
saw
yeah,
the
yeah. So
spaces,
it's my
and he
hope.
mentioned a number, and I said, you know,
Yeah.
either I have a different plan here, or something's different, but I had
Yeah.
different spaces.
I didn't want parking to be really the issue in terms of conversation,
That's
so
fine.
I was just using a number to get you guys up to the value of volume, but talking about parking, you do have, what your ordinance requires is, in regulations, this has a minimum and a maximum. And so what we're showing here is we meet that requirement as well. So we're not asking for any relief from that, wouldn't be coming from you guys anyway.
Given the amount of wetlands you have on that lot, you said that the lot was big enough to actually make two lots. Is there a contiguous, square footage of non-wetland soil requirement for this kind of an application? In other words, if they were to divide that lot, the only reason I'm asking is because I'm troubled by the 2 buildings per lot. If that building on the corner of Shattuck and River Road is to be part of your business, that would be an accessory building, which would be, I would think that would be allowed. And if your intent at some later period in time is to actually subdivide that out because you have 2 principal buildings, then that's a different kettle of fish. But I wonder whether there's so little non-wetland soil on that end of the lot, if it would actually be possible to subdivide it.
Yeah, so that area that you're looking at right there.
Yes.
Is actually building setbacks and wetland setbacks.
Okay.
So there's a lot more land area there that's not wetland related. So the wetland line is the triple dash line with the,
And what is your rationale for asking for 2 principal buildings per lot?
The rationale is that this property, as we just went through, it has enough area to be 2 lots of record. It has enough frontage. The frontage requirement in the office district is 300 feet of frontage. There's 1,800 feet of frontage here. So, I mean, conceptually, that's 6 lots. So in terms of the appearance, the requirement of only having 1 building per lot is basically to maintain the town's rural character, to avoid the appearance of overcrowding.
Yeah.
And you have a lot here that has enough land area to be divided into 2 lots. That's not the intent here. And it has a huge amount of frontage, so that it doesn't appear, it's not going to appear overcrowded. It's not going to appear that there were 2 buildings, you know, jammed onto 1 lot.
But my point is, if you were to, at this point in time, just say this is an accessory building that we anticipate using for our principal use, at some future time, if you were to try to use that lot separately, then you would ask for a subdivision. And you, at that point in time, would say, well, this is an existing building we have, we want to sell it. And why would you ask for us now to approve 2 principal buildings per lot when that actually is, at the present time, planned to be an accessory?
Let me just, because I have the benefit of knowing a little bit about this operation. I don't think that they know what they're gonna do. This is a big undertaking for Stoneface, and I think if they, by granting this variance, it would allow them to rent that building out, John, to somebody else, at some, you know, if they needed to generate income. it may be used by them, and then you're absolutely right, it would be an accessory. But this would allow them the opportunity to rent it, to generate income while they're building their, rebuilding their business in a new location. Is that a fair?
Yeah, there's a building there already.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Your application stated it would be for warehousing and perhaps future office space.
Do you intend to take that building down?
We don't, we don't really know exactly what we're gonna be able to do with that
Please.
building at that. Yeah, when we were in front of the planning board, of course, we don't wanna have that building on the lot. It's gonna boil down to, when we're able to rehab that building.
That's kind of been a thorn in our side, and how many times have you been in here for? 3 times, right,
Too successful.
yeah. Yeah.
But it would be fairly, is there a reason it couldn't be drawn accordingly and be deeded as 2 separate lots and then take one of the variances off the table, because you could comply, if I'm not mistaken.
No, you can't do that, I can explain why. Because Mark Phillips, I'm the property owner today under Rollins Farm Holdings. This town requires your detention basins to be on the lot it benefits. So if we had to cut this into 2 lots, the lot line would be down here. And this is the wetland area, right here, this is all unusable. So you'd end up with a lot, with some land over here of little or no value, and then this piece of land over here with that house, that building. So this is out of the question, because this detention area here is benefiting this property. So the detention basin has to be on the lot that it benefits.
Right,
And
makes sense.
over here, this side, what I sold to the LASIK surgeons, and Dennis Hebert reprimanded me and made me give this land away to them, because that's their detention basin. But in every other town that I work in, which is dozens throughout 4 states, you can easily do an easement. You don't have to have the land deeded for that purpose. So if it was an easement, we'd have the benefit of going right up to this line and using this to benefit this property. That's the hardship, because there's no other lot in the town that I'm aware of that is bifurcated by wetlands.
Yeah.
And so my job in buying this land is to maximize the productivity of every square foot of industrial and commercial land we have in this town, because we're losing the value of those power plants.
Yes.
So that's what I'm trying to do by presenting this. Thank you.
Any additional questions for Steve on the plans?
No, I think this is good info, really good info, good to know.
It wasn't too long ago, a year and a half ago, that you got, that the property next door to this, the medical center, the surgical center was before you, I think, asking for and receiving this very same variance.
Exactly.
With the exception of the wall signage, but, and the 2 principal uses, but the dimensional setbacks were all before you. It's unfortunate, I wasn't here, I don't know the history, I know part of the history of the Shattuck overlay district, but why the setbacks were so large is beyond me, because I mean, if you go down Shattuck Way, none of those properties comply with a 75-foot setback.
I have a couple questions,
Certainly.
of course. I can't say, first off, I'm gonna say that Stoneface is fabulous. Love it. I don't even drink beer, and I love it. It's good to have you here. You support the town, so I think that's really great. I did have somebody ask me a question, and I'll ask it to you. Are you gonna continue with the hours that you have now, so that we won't, the hours are fabulous, because you're not promoting any midnight drinking sprawls and the police, you know, running around. Are you gonna continue with those hours?
We will likely go a little bit later, but not
Not,
11, 12 o'clock at night, no. That we have no desire to have a, you know, ridiculous party atmosphere over
yeah,
there.
I think they're great, you know,
It's helped us keep our staff as well, because they're out of work early
Sure.
and it's not,
sure.
yeah.
And do you ever fathom doing one of these crazy things, like having a band in there and all of that?
Potentially, yeah, I mean, we went to the planning board, I believe, to do live music like once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't really had the ability to do it
Okay.
in a good way that isn't, you know,
Okay,
disruptive.
I know that you're not a planning board, Edna, but, it might be helpful, Pete, if you showed Edna, the public space on this building is actually behind the building, so if there were live music, it would actually be,
Towards the highway.
towards the highway.
I
So-
can show
which
you.
even if there is, who's it gonna bother?
Well, I guess that's my point, is that if they had AC/DC
Yeah,
back there,
yeah.
probably, you wouldn't hear them, so.
The idea with this would be lawn, you know, have the open space.
Those are the only two questions. I'd like to see that building down. I've said that before.
Well, you're
That was a
referring to
statement,
the,
isn't it?
you're referring to the wooden addition to the building.
Yes,
That's the
yes,
part.
that, yeah,
You didn't say the corpus was jungle, and I cut all the trees down.
yeah, that's the only thing.
Well, it's a placeholder now because it's within the setback. So if I take it down, I cannot replace it. So I wanna replace it at some point.
With same,
Right.
yeah.
No,
right.
Well,
with that expanded building.
With a,
Yeah.
well, building,
Yeah.
but using that, you know, footprint.
Of course, you know, getting the variances is gonna make it a heck of a lot easier to do something with that building.
Yes, exactly.
Is that building the same footprint? The proposed one, the same footprint as the existing?
Not quite, it's essentially in the same location, but we moved it off the property line a little bit as well. We rotated it, so we actually were able to move it off the property line a little bit, make it more.
But this board ruled earlier, a year ago or so, for the 30-foot setbacks, would be in conformity with what we're asking for tonight for the other building.
So Bob, I think it might have predated you, I don't remember. There was a lengthy process that Mark took us through, on that building to expand it. So this building that you see here is consistent with what the zoning board approved a year ago, I believe.
The main building or the?
No, the
accessory?
This accessory building, Mark is actually, this was
Okay.
going to be a retail sales for lobster, which the board granted, they granted an expansion of the building, and then the nail in the coffin was cooking lobsters, and that didn't happen, and the whole project went by the wayside. So, but the building expansion that Mark was granted a year ago is consistent with what you see here.
Good.
You should stand up, let me sit here.
You're doing a good job.
Could I ask, the percentage of the business that has to do with the retail and dining, that is a certain percentage of your business at your present location. Will it be consistent with that percentage at your proposed new location?
Can you address that, Pete?
I'm interested because in the previous applicant, we were very strict about, we can't have people eating food or, you know, having a restaurant atmosphere there. And so to be somewhat fair to the previous applicant, it's important for me to know that your operation is going to be basically brewing and the restaurant is an accessory use, as it seems to be now. But it seems you have a healthy amount of parking spaces for a restaurant there. That was not the intent of the zoning ordinance, to have restaurants in that location.
And are you looking for breakdown of square footage?
Well,
within the
I'm
facility?
kind of interested in, you know, what you have now, you know, is this a glorified tasting room with an outside patio, which is pretty consistent with the main your main business being a brewery, and the second being, venue for food, and drink, and perhaps entertainment. Is this percentage going to change as to be more of a restaurant use percentage-wise than what you have now at your present location?
Pete, I'll
I can
let you address
I can
that,
answer,
yeah.
So, to give you like a little perspective about the business, currently 10% of the beer we produce at Stoneface goes into the restaurant, 90% of it goes out into distribution. So, our core business is not having a restaurant. It is absolutely sending beer to the distribution. Currently, the tasting room, and you have to check my math on this, so currently the tasting room, you probably know off the top of your head.
Revenue,
No,
square footage,
square footage.
it's 2,600 square feet out of 23,000 square feet, so
Right, so that, it'll increase a bit from there. I think it
about
might,
20%, yeah, it's about the same.
it might increase a bit from there, maybe, is it about 50% more space? But it's also gonna be 2 floors.
Right, 2 floors, so,
And so the building, percentage-wise, the restaurant operation will go up a smidge, but not, it's not gonna be like half the building will be
Right, the
restaurant.
regulation calls was 10%.
Yeah. Well,
The square footage, if I'm not mistaken, square footage of the restaurant is supposed to be within 10% of the,
For an accessory use or for the existing building?
for the main building.
For the new building,
Right, for the new building.
sure. I don't know off the top of my head what the square footage is, we'd have to.
I thought it was close. I did some quick numbers with the numbers I could see there, and it looked like it was pushing that envelope also.
I have to look at the numbers, I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head.
so would it be fair to say you are expanding your facility by how much?
Well, the footprint of the building, square footage wise, is about the same as what we have today.
Yeah,
The difference is it's much higher, so that we can,
your production is what I'm interested in. Like, would your accessory, retail and restaurant uses comprise only 10% of what you're producing there?
probably the right ballpark.
It is. Okay, so it's no increase in percentage of what you're doing now. It's just that
We would,
everything is grand.
I mean, we would expect that, I mean, the whole idea behind this is to increase beer and distribution. So if we go from, call it, we do 10,000 barrels currently, if we wanna get to, let's say 15 or 20,000 barrels, we expect the percentage of beer consumed in the restaurant to go down as a percentage as we grow in distribution. So again, the core business is and always will be distributed beer. It is absolutely a factor.
Well, I understand that would, of course it is,
Yeah.
but, just,
I mean, the big problem with parking currently is that, and we've gone through the planning board multiple times about parking, is that, there's surges of parking on the weekends. There are people parking on Shattuck Way, which I know that, the planning board is not happy about. So we're trying to mitigate that, and maximizing the parking, is the point. We also experience issues with Friday afternoon after work, traffic where one person, one car on Fridays or Thursday afternoons. So we have, I think, 36-ish spaces, is that right, in the lot that we have currently, but we have 100 seats inside. We can't fill, the parking lot will be full way before the restaurant is.
Even in the back, you don't have enough parking,
There's not enough parking anywhere.
period.
so how many seats are you going to have in your new, tasting room?
It might be 200, but the square footage is pretty close to what it is currently.
Help me?
With outdoor space though, I mean, you're gonna have outdoor space, it's hard to know at this point how many people, we know that how many people can fit in the room and can fit outside, but it's predicated on parking, what the capacity is. It's a chicken and egg problem. The parking dictates how many seats we can have in a restaurant.
Right, so your dining area and your bar area consists of how many square feet?
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Currently or proposed?
No, proposed.
We have
if I'm reading, I see 1916 on the dining, and then I see 300 and 200. I don't know if the bar area is one number and the area around it is an additional number. I'm just curious what the footprint of the restaurant area would be.
Well, if you look at, so each of the little dots is 30 by 30 feet, so that's a 30-foot. So if you look at, look at the floor plan. So each one of the dots in the middle, so that dot right there.
Right, but I'm talking about the restaurant area.
So there's a dot there, so it's like, it's 60 by 60.
So 6, okay.
And then there's kitchen space, bathrooms, and then there'll be a second half floor that's 30 by.
So if you're 60 by 60, you're beyond the 10% of the total square footage of the building.
No, because you have two floors.
There's a second floor above.
No.
Right, so I don't think the percentage is office space.
Yeah, I'm not aware of the 10%.
So, John, if you look at the list, or I guess I should address this to the whole board, the second variance requested is, I'm sorry, the first one, Article 3, Section 2C, to allow public dining and bars as an accessory use. I don't think there's any limit if that variance is granted. I don't think you're limited to 10% or 12% or whatever, but,
I was aware that the original, setup was sort of a flurry of paper between Portsmouth and Newington, and it was, sort of, I thought, a stipulation of some sort there.
well, I think the tasting rooms enjoy a special, privilege by the state, that if you brew beer.
4 ounce
you can-
tasting room.
Well, I think that if you brew beer, you can also sell a limited amount of food on the side, and I think that's what you're referring to. I think that's how, I think they may have snuck in the door originally. From what my understanding was that all the permits or the information went to the city of Portsmouth, not to the town of Newington. It's water over the dam.
Right.
You know, I think everybody's pleased with the
We're
operation.
pleased with the operation, but,
So now they're just trying, I think, again, this variance request would not limit them. It would be an accessory, it would still be an accessory to the beer manufacturing operation, but I would argue that there's no limit in terms of strict percentages of square footage, or, I mean, we can't limit them to revenue, because we're never gonna know what their revenue is, and they're not gonna tell us, and we wouldn't ask, so you really gotta do it by
well,
square footage.
my concern is the building next door obviously doesn't conform to the setback requirements, and they should not be made to
Right,
do any different.
Yep.
The building that may wanna come somewhere else on Shattuck Way may wanna be a restaurant. And there is no use variance for that particular thing unless we change the ordinance. And so
well,
if we-
there could be, anybody could ask for a use variance, I mean, someone could, ask for a house over there if they wanted to, the residential's not allowed. But again, the argument that I think that I'm making, and I think that they made in their application, is that, a restaurant is a typical and normal accessory to a brewery. So, it'd be very different than a standalone restaurant.
And if I can address that, so, Stoneface is a licensed beverage manufacturer under New Hampshire law. And under the statute that they operate under, they are allowed to sell beer on premises. But if they do that, they are required to provide food service.
I read your application regarding the license required for more than 4 ounce servings, or it was to have something, and then the requirement therefore to serve food. I'm just trying to resolve it in my mind when the previous applicant was told, there can be no cooking, there can be nobody eating here. It's against the zoning ordinance, and now he was also a producer, he was going to produce, some sort of, farm fish, or farm shellfish there. And this was gonna be a secondary use, which I just want to be able to differentiate this somehow, in fairness to our zoning ordinance, and also in favor,
Why don't you just look at it like they're just moving down the street? That's the way I look at it, you're just moving down the street. You're expanding.
well, you're going from the industrial to the office district, and it's a little bit different. I mean, okay, I'm not gonna split hairs, let's move on from that.
Yeah.
Well, just on that point, I'll ask another question. Is it two steps? Is it a tasting room and a little bit of food? Is that one permit with the state? And then if you go to, I assume when you say restaurant, you're gonna have a full menu? And so is it a step further than a tasting room situation? Is it a secondary permit to go to a full restaurant situation?
My understanding is that if you provide, if you sell the product on premises for consumption on premises, that you're required to have food service.
Okay.
That is correct, because a friend of mine, loaded question, has food service.
Yes.
And I always thought that, it's minimal, but
Yeah, and I can speak to, how those licenses work as well. Loaded question, for example, they can serve you 2 pints because they have a limited amount of food. By operating a full restaurant, we get a restaurant license attached to our liquor license, as Mr. McEachern was describing. So one of the rights as a beverage manufacturer, which loaded question is not, they're a nano brewery, it's a different type of license. As a beverage manufacturer, you're permitted to apply for and attach a restaurant license, which then removes the limit of 2 pints per individual, because you're
interesting.
serving them food which will fill their belly and helps with the, saturation. So, that's why we attach a restaurant license. It gives us more flexibility, and then we also wanted to do more than ancillary food or bringing up a food truck, let's say. We wanted to be serving our own food that we were proud of, just as much as we're proud of the beer.
And that restaurant license doesn't restrict you? I mean, you could be serving spirits and the like in the restaurant, or does it restrict you to just your beer?
Yeah, good question. We can apply for a cocktail liquor license on top of the restaurant
On top
license. So there's 3 tiers of liquor licenses that gets attached to restaurant license. We opted for sort of a middle tier, so we don't have a cocktail beverage license right now, but we could easily attach that as well and serve spirits for those who don't like beer. But we're a brewery, so we chose not to do that right now.
So, I submitted a memorandum in support of the application and addressed the variance criteria. I am prepared to go through and
Well,
forward.
let's open this up to a public hearing then. Is there any people in the audience about it that would like to speak for or against? Thank you.
Ted Condis, 381 Newington Road. I think the brewery's been a great asset to the town, just to say what Ed said earlier. They've brought a lot of good people in town, they've been very supportive of the charities in town, the school, and the other things that are going on. And the variance that they have in the area they are, I think are minimal. I think they should go through it, I think they should proceed. And I talked to Selectman Marconi earlier today, who's ill, and he endorsed it, would like to say that he's in favor of this at this particular time. Thank you very much. I don't want to take any more of your deliberation time.
Anyone else want to speak for or against it?
John, just so you know, that everybody else, aside from Ted Connors and myself, are part of this team.
Okay.
So,
That makes it
so they wanted to come in and take all the chairs. It's really clever.
Okay, well, let's close the public hearing then and have the regular deliberative session. I don't know how we want to, town planners suggested that we launch these, the first four. Well, 4, I sort of insisted because I was a little bit unclear about this 2 principal buildings per lot. But if we do the first 4, and someone other than me, these are not all to do with setbacks. This is to allow public dining by retail sales as an accessory use in the office district. And I think that's a little different than just setbacks, but if we want to just handle all these things together, or perhaps, how does the board feel about the first variance? Do you want to lump that all together with a setback, the new request for relief from the setback requirements, or do you want to address the dining bar with retail sales? We've talked about that a bit. It seems to me that's a separate issue, but
I see your point, that we as far as you're concerned, we addressed that before with the applicant with the lobster. But like I said, it's apples and oranges. As far as I'm concerned, Stoneface is just moving down the street. They're just gonna take the same business that they have and they're gonna make it bigger and better down the street, so.
Well,
I get that, but it's a different, you're moving into a different zone.
True.
And we have the regulations for a reason, and we're stepping out a lot of them in doing this.
We are stepping out a lot.
In speaking to your point, I think 2 through 5 can get lumped together. And I think that's a good fit. And I'm not speaking for or against the public dining, but I do believe that is a separate issue.
well then, let's, go
So-
along to separate the first, variance request. Article 3, Section 2C, to allow public dining / bar with retail sales as accessory uses in the office zoning district. Now, if somebody wants to, I'm highly in favor of separating that out, and I think we should. So, if I could, I don't think we need to make a motion to separate it out, but I think we could consider the 5 criteria on that.
Is the applicant gonna present his criteria and reasons?
Well, he could, I suppose, it's been laid out, and perhaps that's the appropriate way we do things, generally, is it, Jane?
Usually you do, but,
Okay.
you know,
Okay, well, then let us,
So what do you want us, how do you want to, which,
I want, instead of what,
if you wanna refer to
we,
it.
the first one we're gonna separate out?
I would separate that out, yes,
Okay.
and that way we're clear about what we're doing.
Okay, so if the applicant can address the 5 criteria to the first article?
That would be kinda nice, yes, yes,
Would you do that?
if he would separate them out as well, that would be
Yeah.
good, yes.
Thank you. The first criteria is that granting the variance not be contrary to the public interest.
It's not, my,
Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest because the presence of the requested accessory uses will not alter the character of the area or impact public health, safety, or welfare. The fact is that Stoneface has been engaging in these same uses on Shattuck Way since 2016 without altering the character of this area or adversely impacting the public. Granting the variance will allow Stoneface to expand within the town, creating new jobs, economic prosperity, and convenience for the town's residents. If the variance is not granted, Stoneface, which is looking to grow, will have to look at other sites. For these reasons, granting the variance is not going to be contrary to the public interest. Next criteria is whether the spirit of the ordinance is observed. The spirit of Article 3, Section 2 is found in the general intent of the zoning ordinance, which seeks to promote economic prosperity, convenience, and the general welfare of the town, among other objectives. The specific intent of the office district ordinance, as stated in Article 3, Section 2, is to encourage the provision of safe and convenient pedestrian access between the district's office buildings and nearby restaurants. That's the intent of this specific section. Stoneface seeks to build a new production facility on currently vacant land. To do this, Stoneface requires it to be allowed to provide food service, which it is required to do in conjunction with its on-site consumption, and also retail sales of product related to its merchandise, all of which is normal and customary in the craft brew industry. Granting the variance in this case will be in keeping with the spirit of the ordinance because it will allow an existing allowed use to expand within the town, which will increase economic prosperity in the town's tax base. Denying the variance will likely cause a successful local business to relocate. Substantial justice. The next criteria is that substantial justice be done. Enforcing Article 3, Section 2, so as to prevent a licensed beverage manufacturer from providing food service, which it's required to do under state law, and from selling product-related merchandise to its customers, which is customary in the industry, will not benefit the public and would force an existing allowed use to look elsewhere to expand. Substantial justice in this situation requires that the variance be granted. Next criteria is property values. Granting the variance will not diminish surrounding property values. The subject parcel abuts an undeveloped lot to the south currently and is located across Shattuck Way from a large industrial property to the east and is across River Road from the Spalding Turnpike to the west, which lies just over a narrow strip of undeveloped land. The value of the neighboring industrial property is based on its economic utility, which will be unaffected by the requested variance. The value of the other adjacent properties is likely to be enhanced by this proposed use, which will demonstrate economic vitality in this area. In addition, Stoneface is now operating on Shattuck Way so that the transfer of its existing business from its current location up the road to 66 Shattuck will have little net effect on traffic in the area. And overall, this is a very busy area with the Spalding Turnpike nearby and even commuter traffic. Based on these factors, granting the variance will result in no significant change to the existing conditions in this area. And it's not going to negatively impact the surrounding property values. Last criteria is unnecessary hardship. Literal enforcement of the ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship given the special conditions of the property. The subject property is 5.71 acres. It's irregularly shaped with more than 6 times the required road frontage, and it's burdened with wetlands, all of which substantially impact its development potential, leaving just 38% of its land developable. Literal enforcement of Article 3, Section 2 to deny the variance will have little or no relationship to the objective of promoting economic prosperity or convenience within the town or increasing the walkability of the office district. Denying the variance would hinder prosperity by preventing an allowed principal use from constructing a new facility, which would deny the town new tax revenue and likely cause the business to relocate from Newington. Stoneface's requested food service and retail sales uses are reasonable because they are customary in the manufacture of beverages, which is an allowed use in the office district, and these accessory uses currently exist in close proximity to the proposed site. State law allows Stoneface to have on-premises facility for the consumption of beverages as a component of its beverage manufacturing license and requires that it provide the food service. The requested uses will be accessory to the property's primary use and therefore will not constitute a primary use for any other subsequent owner of this property. And for those reasons, I submit that the property is entitled to the variance to have the requested food service and retail sales on site. Thank you.
One of the things I recognize your concern, and it makes a lot of sense to have that concern. One of the things, the distinction for me, I think, is a little bit, is this is an industry coming into the office area that will probably enhance the office area, because things are changing such that you have an office someplace and you have a place where people will be attracted to work there and so forth. Versus, it sounds like I'm not familiar with the lobster shack or whatever, but I don't think that's gonna have that type of impact of improving that area. But that's, I'm trying to come up with a distinction here to help you and help me.
So your point.
Interesting that in reading again a couple more times that hotel is an acceptable use. And that leads us all the way down the road into the people and the activities. And in reading the accessory use, and it may not matter, but it says non-public dining, not public dining, it says non-public dining facilities have the restriction on the square footage. And we're talking about public dining. We're not talking, this is not a private club. And I don't know if that's a real distinction, but anyway, I just think it's interesting that the hotel is accepted in that area. And you would think it would cross all the same concerns we'd have for noise or activities or things of that nature.
And even a restaurant, right?
Well, you know, a hotel's gonna have, at least you're gonna have your cereal and your coffee and your bagel and that's almost standard.
Yeah, I think that perhaps, and I won't say that I know why that is in there, but traffic has always been a concern. And there's a certain number of vehicle trips per day. If you go to a hotel, you're there for overnight, you've reached your destination. And restaurants is constant in flux and outgo. And that perhaps is why that's in there. But hotels certainly don't seem to be coming in there very quickly. But,
You're concerned about traffic on Shattuck?
I would say that this is,
Come down and live with me on Nimble Hill.
well, I know exactly what it's like on Nimble Hill, because I live on Nimble Hill, right at the corner, yes. But I'm just saying, that there's 186 parking spaces. But there'll be an impact on traffic. And there's also heavy trucks, there's also, the residents of Patterson Lane will be affected, and so, it's just something I bring up.
Yeah.
Are reasonable uses for the property other than this, but this is probably the highest and best use for the property, as the brewery is actually the main anchor. But, I question some of the things in the ordinance. I think that the whole, office district should be rewritten. I think the sign ordinance should be rewritten. It's a constant source of variance granting that we do here.
Let's start tonight.
What do you say?
Let's start tonight.
No, we
Start
can do
tonight.
that. That's not what we can do. That's not our purview.
Oh, I don't know.
That's a vote of the town speaks as to what they want based on recommendations of the planning board, and that's what we have here. But, if someone in the group would like to create an argument for the 5 variances rather than, last time I know I tried to plagiarize off the applicant's, explanation, I was told that was probably not the best approach. Someone wants to.
There's no doubt that the configuration of the property is of no doing of the property owner, that the wetlands and whatnot all have created, hardships on the owner.
If we're separating out the actual use variance, then I think if that's what we decide, did we decide we're actually going to separate out this article?
As far as I'm
You're
concerned, we can
sticking
vote
to
on
the
all
first-
10.
I'm speaking to the first variance request, allowing a restaurant retail use in the office, so.
Yeah, that's what
And that's what,
we're on.
so I would respectfully say, the setbacks, we're gonna discuss that in a minute, but I think now it's the use.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, I
So-
see, okay.
So if we can come to
Yeah,
an
no,
argument for the 5 criteria
No.
in terms of restaurant use, then we'd be going along in an orderly procedure.
Chinese restaurant in that.
Not only knows why, that predates,
gonna ask
that predates the office.
Just,
But
just because I've sat in on the planning boards when uses have come before us on that restaurant, that was like, they had a time limit on that to continue that use in that zone as a restaurant, and the time limit was up. So anybody that tries to put in a restaurant again has to do the same thing as these folks would be doing.
And they probably will.
as far as I'm concerned, they burned that one down.
I wondered why the applicant didn't go to that particular property there, but, maybe there wasn't enough room.
So is somebody gonna go through the criteria for this
Yeah, he was
article?
attempting to, but he was sort of going off on
Well, you straightened them out, you straightened them right out, so.
yeah, so we make a motion to approve, somebody makes a motion to approve the variance request, or,
We're looking for number 1, correct?
yeah, somebody has to make a motion to.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, somebody second it?
In your motion, it's the variance, from Article 3, Section 2C.
Correct.
Yes,
So noted.
so it's been made and it's seconded.
And you seconded
And you want to
our
vote?
criteria?
I think the discussion usually requires us to go through the 5 criteria if we could manage
Yes.
it.
I think our lawyer just did.
Well, that's an approach that we
The
can
board
elect to
has to-
take, I suppose,
If
but I
you
think the
prefer-
board should deliberate,
I mean, you can agree with what he said, but you have to make a statement that that it meets the criteria, that the board thinks it meets. The applicant always thinks it meets the criteria. The board
Really?
has to say.
Let's go through it. I'll do you the favor you always do to me, here you go.
Thanks,
He's chair.
yeah. Do you have these even down? Oh, that's the way, my book isn't like that. Okay. The variance will not be contrary to the public interest. Absolutely not, in my opinion. It will enhance the public interest. It will help the tax structure. It will, improve the lot both ways. The spirit of the ordinance is observed. The ordinance is probably not, but I don't like the ordinance, so.
Oh, geez, no, don't say that. You find a way to say that the use is
We
actually,
only have to meet 4 of the 5.
no, you have to meet all 5.
I think it's okay to say that this is a manufacturing use, which is allowed in the office
Yes.
district, and the restaurant and food service is
Substantial
a
justice is done, of
accessory.
course. The value of surrounding properties are not diminished, they will be enhanced. And little enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship for the applicant. I agree, totally.
Okay, so everybody that agrees with Edna is probably going to vote on the motion in the affirmative, so call for a vote.
Aye. Yes.
I'm not voting because I'm chairman.
Chairman.
I can,
We're voting right now?
I hope so.
On favor?
Okay, so 3, and Joe, you said 4, okay, so. Variance request passes, okay, so now
So
let's,
it passed by a vote of 4?
right, vote of 4,
Or
yeah.
one abstention.
And none opposed, I didn't see anybody opposed. We're not doing this right, okay. So now let's move on to the dimensional requirements, which would be Article 3, Section 8, throughout, for allow parking within 20.96 feet of Shattuck Way where 50 feet is required. Article 3, Section 8, to allow a structure within 30 feet of the front property line where 75 feet is required. Article 4, to allow parking within 20 feet of the front property line where 75 feet is required. And Article 5, we put in there, to allow 2 principal. Let's not do that. Okay, let's just do these, setbacks.
So the first,
The next 3
Next 3,
variance
yeah.
requests would be from Article 3 and Article 4, Section 6, regarding parking, structure, and other parking. So somebody would make a motion regarding those.
I'll make a motion, we accept those.
I'll second.
So this is a motion to allow paid parking within 20.96 feet of Shattuck Way where 50 feet is required, to allow a structure within 30 feet, the front property line where 75 feet is required. Article 4, to allow parking within 20 feet of the front property line where 75 feet is required. So, I think perhaps this would be an easy one for Edna to do. Regarding,
I don't mind doing it. Do you,
I want you to go, I want someone,
I-
would someone please go through the 5 criteria?
I'll be happy to do it, John. But, 2, 3, and 4, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, I'll make a motion.
motion has already been.
You gotta
made.
make-
Motion,
You're
right?
going through the criteria.
Right.
Wait a minute, no, I think we do have to make a motion.
Yeah, we do.
We do have to make a motion.
Yeah, Jane.
Hold on, I thought Ralph made the
He
motion.
did.
He did.
I'm
Okay,
sorry.
okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry, sorry, pardon me.
Sorry, excuse me.
Will
Thank you,
seconded.
Jane.
You want me to rip my mask off and holler at you?
Yes,
No.
please,
No.
please. Okay,
Just
I'll
to
do the
clar- no,
criteria.
just to clar- this is actually 3, 4. I don't wanna drag this out, but if you look at Alec McEachern's, memo, page 2 of 9, This is actually variance 3, 4, and 5. I think we should just use his numbering.
Okay,
Okay, well, regarding the.
Yeah, so it's 3, 4, it's actually 3, 4, and 5 on the McEachern, memo.
Yeah, just for clarification, on the actual application that was submitted,
Oh.
I ordered the variances based on which section they appear in the zoning ordinance, to keep them all in order.
Okay.
In my memo, I reorganized them slightly to have them make a little more sense in the presentation.
okay.
So it's variance request, 3, 4, and 5, Article 3, Section 8, Article 3, Section 8, and Article 4, Section 6. But you read them, John.
Okay, three.
Exactly what you read.
Okay, so to amend the motion to state to this, variance request.
Where are we?
There's the agenda. What were those numbers again?
So it's just like on the public hearing notice.
No, it's on the McEachern, memo, page
three.
2.
Oh, that was
It's
three.
numbers 3, 4, and 5. Article 3, Section 8, Article 3, Section 8, and Article 4, Section 6. And John read them verbatim.
Where did you find those numbers? In the agenda?
No,
Okay,
okay,
okay.
do you have this memo, John, in your packet?
He's got it.
Yeah, I got it.
That
Okay,
memo?
all right, yeah.
It's right there in front of you. If you go to page 2,
Okay. Yeah.
it would be good if we all use that, because it's the number, it's right there, the numbering. There, and then we're all on the same page.
Okay.
Just get that confusion. So do you wanna go back to 2? Because you did 1.
3, 4, and 5.
Do you wanna go back to 2? Because you did 1.
Can they do the criteria for the 3 of them?
Yes,
Right?
Yes.
Yes.
well, if the
That makes
applicant
sense.
allows it, I think he
Is it
will.
allowed?
Well,
Yes.
as long as the applicant is fine with it, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You don't need to go through individual criteria.
You lost?
Well,
Okay. Are we good with that? You want me to do the
Yeah, so
criteria?
in essence, you're doing criteria saying
3, 4,
why
and
you
5.
accept
Yes,
the setbacks, right?
right.
Yeah, they're all
Yeah.
the same.
They're all setbacks. Okay, I'll run them. The variance will not be contrary to the public interest. Do you have any discussion on that? Because some of it's parking and setbacks from the road and,
Given the position of the lot.
the configuration of
The
the lot.
configuration of the lot and the uses on River Road, I don't think there's a problem with that.
The spirit of the ordinance is observed.
Once I give you some. I mean, it's a 5.7 acre parcel in the
Right,
office industrial zone. You know, the development shown here is consistent with how all the other properties in that corridor are developed.
substantial justice will be done,
Yes.
obviously. The value of surrounding properties are not diminished, in fact, I think they're be increased tremendously. You good with that?
I'm good with that, yeah.
Okay. Literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship, definitely.
Definitely this way.
Because there's not much else you can do with it.
I've done 2 roads.
You good with that? Okay. Ready to vote?
So, yeah. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
There's 4 again.
So
All
now,
opposed?
do you wanna go back to 2?
Yeah, I think that would be great, the old one about if the applicant wants to address that particular item, which would be the 2 principal buildings per lot, that's that would be the next bone of contention, especially with me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the first criteria is whether or not it's contrary to the public interest. Granting the variance is not going to be contrary to public interest because the presence of more than one principal building on the lot will not alter the character of this area or impact health, safety, or welfare. We have a lot that is, I mean, it has 1,800 linear feet of frontage. And it has enough land area to comprise 2 lots of record. It's not practical to subdivide, but, I mean, the land area is there. So in terms of the concern when we talk about the ordinance section that says 1 principal building per lot, the concern is we don't want the lots to be overcrowded. And if, in looking at this property, I mean, there's gonna be almost 500 feet of separation between these 2 buildings. And the proposed building at the north end, the smaller building, is clearly going to look subordinate to the larger production facility. So it's not gonna be as if there's 2 equally sized buildings on the property. There's gonna be one quite small building 500 feet away from the larger production facility. Turning to the next criteria, the spirit of the ordinance. So the spirit of the ordinance is to preserve the rural character of the town by preventing overcrowding. And as described, allowing these 2 buildings to exist on this lot is not going to violate that spirit. It's going to appear to anybody driving by that these are probably 2 separate buildings, and unless they have identical signage on them, you might not even know that, you know, they're under common ownership. Third test is substantial justice. If the variance is denied, Stoneface will lose the ability to locate its new facility in the town. Town will lose the new tax revenue, and the public is going to gain nothing in return. So that's, when we look at whether or not substantial justice is done, there's sort of a weighing between the disadvantage to the property owner and what does the public stand to gain out of this if the ordinance is enforced. And there's really nothing for the public to gain by denying this variance. Property values. The presence of the 2 principal buildings on the lot are not going to impact the surrounding property values. There's, you know, industrial land across the street. That, and the value of that property is based on how much money you can make from it, and it doesn't really matter what's sitting across the road from you. We have the Spalding Turnpike on the other side. There just aren't any properties around here to be impacted, and having the 2 buildings is not gonna, even if there were, you know, other office buildings across the street, it's not going to impact, it would not impact their value, just because the appearance is that there's plenty of land here for more than 1 lot. The last criteria is unnecessary hardship. Literal enforcement of the ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship given the special conditions of the property, which give it the appearance of constituting 2 or more lots. Given the conditions of the lot and the separation of the buildings, enforcement of Article 3, Section 10 would do nothing to further the objective of preventing the appearance of overcrowding on the lot. Stoneface's request to have 2 principal buildings is reasonable given that a building currently exists in the location of the requested 2nd building at the north end. And it would be clearly subordinate in size to the principal primary building. So in summary, on this point, you know, all of the elements are met. The land, you know, is really not, it would not be practical to subdivide it. You heard from the owner tonight on why. It's a large parcel. It's got a really strange configuration. To me, it looks like a snake's head when I was looking at it. And, you know, having 2 principal buildings here is not gonna seem out of place or ordinary as you drive by. It's gonna be what you would expect.
So, anybody wanna make a motion on
You wanna discuss
variance
any of
number
that
2,
first,
so
or
that
you
we need to make a motion in a second to,
Just a discussion real quick.
yeah, please.
Yeah.
Real quick. So that existing building is coming down. In theory?
In theory, I mean, we've gotta figure out, specifically what we, can do with that building or tear it down and rebuild. Yeah, if we get the variance here tonight for that building, we're gonna do something with it, cause we're not gonna let it sit there vacant. It's gonna end up being something, and it's gonna likely be torn down and rebuilt.
Right, but we will be approving this. Now, it just says allowing two buildings, so are we approving this being a different building, or are we approving that this building might get a paint job and remain as it is? Because we have a plot plan which has a proposed new building, and you're saying the existing building might stay there. And so those are kind of like two different
I
animals.
can't give you the timing of when that might happen, that's the problem, cause we've got a long way to go.
We're only approving 2 buildings on one lot.
I get that, but we're approving it while we're looking at this picture.
Exactly.
And we're approving it, seeing that we're gonna get something nice and pretty there, when it could be the same building with a paint job.
Exactly.
And the zoning, we have the ability to add any contingency we want, or any condition we want to an approval, if we wanna make that part of it.
Okay, somebody wants to.
May I?
Yes.
Mark Phillips?
Can you let John's?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So just to answer your question, granting the variance would allow for a more usable building that would make taking the old building down that much easier. I know the planning board showed a strong interest in wanting to take it down. The building that's there now really doesn't function too well for a temporary tenant or long-term for Stoneface. If the variances are granted, it makes for an easier footprint that makes it a lot easier to demolish the existing building, build a more functional building to generate revenue.
And I think it's important to realize, once they tear that building down, they've gotta have something ready to go up there, or they'll lose their grandfather status of having a building right on that corner.
Well, I don't know if they would or not, because we're approving a variance based on this. I don't know if they would lose that standing.
Oh.
And so what I'm saying is, I can appreciate your point, and you got a lot of balls up in the air right now, you're trying to juggle, it's hard to make hard fast, but I'm just saying what I'm conceptualizing, that corner's gonna change, and there's a chance if we approve it, that building stays there. For how long in the future, we don't know. I'm sure they don't wanna leave it there, but it could be there, and I'm just posing
Are
that
you
question.
suggesting
Is
putting
that
a time
anything
limit?
that anyone else is concerned about?
Are you suggesting putting a time limit on it?
I'm saying we have the ability to do that if we choose that's important.
Well, we got in trouble with not doing a time limit on
You know,
once, so.
that we're approving the 2 buildings on a single lot with this footprint. I mean, that would probably, but I don't wanna make a problem out of this if it doesn't need to be.
So, it brings up another question about it. I agree with what you're saying. The other thing is, it doesn't say, it just says another building on the same lot. It doesn't locate where that building will be.
It does.
Yes,
It
certainly.
does, because
You
it-
can only
say
build
that?
in one place.
Well, the variance plan you have submitted, Derek, shows exact setbacks,
Yeah.
so that exact footprint on that plan is what has to be built. No, they can build less, but they can't build any more.
They can't build another location, another building,
No.
based on that.
I think you bring a good, they could tear that one down, and I
Or
suppose,
build it someplace
I
else.
suppose they could build one up here. I don't know why they want to.
I'm just saying.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, they went to the trouble of getting a very, I mean, the reason they're preserving that footprint is,
I
but you bring up a
understand,
good
but
point.
if we're looking at,
Yeah.
if we're looking at being specific and.
I mean, you could, if you wanna approve, I mean, we're fixated on the location, what the variance is for 2 principal uses. If you're fixated on that as a board, what you could say is in the location shown on that plan.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea.
I think that would help. John.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I think that, from the applicant's point of view, if he is, thinking that someday he's gonna rent a building, he's gonna look for a tenant. The tenant may have a requirement for a certain kind of building that he may or may not have. After he's invested the money in tearing that down and placeholding it with another building.
Right, and I'm not disagreeing with that, and I don't think the placeholding could be the concrete slab that it was sitting on.
Oh.
And not the building itself. I haven't been in the building, I don't know what its quality is or not. And again, I'm just bringing it up because we have a footprint here that we're looking at, we're assuming things. And it's always dangerous to skip down when you're assuming things.
I agree with you, I agree.
I think referencing the plan is a great idea.
Time limit on it, or did you want to put it?
I don't want to, but if the board wants to, that's their purview.
What
I
do you
mean,
think,
it
Mark?
might be, I think making it subject to the plot plan that we have in front of us would at least keep it from wandering around or
Yeah,
getting
I think-
bigger.
Okay, yeah.
If we go with proposed, plot plan we have,
Yeah, it makes a great argument because of the wetlands in between the two locations, so it's got a natural separation.
Right.
So I think that's important to reference the plan. I can't imagine they'd put a ticket booth or something, lotto or something in the parking lot. I don't imagine they'd do that, but,
Maybe the lobsterman's coming back.
Is there a number on that?
oh.
well, we have,
Oh, maybe that wouldn't be so good, huh?
Oh, no.
Maybe renderings supposed to have a different.
I have a project number. It does say revision, but it's not dated.
Yeah, you're not gonna wanna, you're gonna wanna look at this thing right here.
Okay.
This is the one that says, vision for town common 11/10/21.
Showing the,
It actually shows all of, it shows all of
Revision,
the
yeah.
dimensional variances.
Yeah.
it includes the removal of this pavement.
That's correct, that's correct.
Well, that's perfect then.
Yeah, that plan right there is just for,
Thank you.
look-see.
Okay, so if someone wants to did somebody make a motion?
No.
Okay,
But
So,
why don't you word it the way you'd like to see it, and then
So,
as.
would make a
per plot
motion to approve
plan, Right,
let me see what we have here. We have, request number 2, which is Article 4, Section 10, for 2 principal buildings on a single property, as laid out in the plot plan, dated 11/10/21. So it's Stone Face Brewery.
Just call it the zoning exhibit,
Okay, zoning exhibit, there you go,
dated,
dated 11/10/21.
second, I can't second. Somebody else second the motion for.
I'll second.
So rather than articulating the conditions specifically, just referring to that.
Yeah,
Correct.
And who seconded?
I did. We going?
Do your deal. You can do it. It's
You
quick.
already did it.
You already did it. That's good enough for you, huh?
Good enough for me, better than that good.
Well. We have one to go through the 5 criteria, yeah?
Let's vote.
I'll go through it.
You want to vote? That makes you happy.
No, I'm not gonna vote on this, but I just wanna make sure this is done. Variance will not be contrary to public interest. Decided it's not. The spirit of the ordinance is observed in the fact that these particular proposed principal buildings are separated by a huge wetland. The lot has significant frontage and is actually, square footage wise, large enough to accommodate 2 buildings. Substantial justice is done so that this person is able to make use of his property in such a way that the maximum potential is realized. The values of surrounding properties are not diminished. This building already exists, probably will be improved upon sometime in the future. Rural enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. Owing to special conditions of the property to distinguish it from other properties in the area, I quickly say that the parcel is large, The proposed two buildings are separated by a wetland. The property cannot be subdivided without disturbing the drainage of the principal property. So, are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Okay, so all those in favor of granting the variance to allow two principal buildings per lot, say aye.
Aye.
Four again, passes. And now, the signs.
Okay.
So I think you could take 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 in a grouping, but it might be helpful if Steve or somebody else from the development team explained why they're asking for these variances, because a lot of them are related. You know, as you remember from the medical office facility, you can't really have a freestanding sign when the setback is 50 feet when the parking lot was right there.
Yes,
So,
right.
but maybe Steve, you could run through them. And one of the setback, or one of the sign variances, which is unique to this property, is, I think it's variance request, 9, is it 9?
One of the buildings.
Requiring a large wall sign, and the reason is, and Steve can explain, is so you can see so they can identify the building from the Spalding Turnpike. So maybe run through them real quickly.
Well, you're the criteria there. But short answer
Just
is.
show them where the signs are and
Yeah,
why
yeah.
they're asking.
And I have a stone face sign right out here, so you know where this facility is. Also have a sign down in front over here, so this building has its own sign as well. Both of those, same issues with John has identified, have to be close enough to the road so you can see them. And 75 feet would put them way back, and they would, the rest of the setback for those. In regards to the other signage, I wasn't familiar with the other ones that we talked about, Alec, but what John just identified, you can say those through.
Yeah, so there are two, signs on the building, and there's a sign that's going to be located on the north facing, portion of the facade of the building. And it's a, proposed 50, square foot sign. It's, a picture of, the hops, a hops plant.
Is that gonna be illuminated?
50 feet,
50 square feet.
50 square feet.
5 by 10.
5 by 10,
5 by 10.
probably twice the size of the sign behind you.
25 square feet is what's allowed under the zoning ordinance for a big sign.
Is it going to be illuminated?
I don't know that.
Is that a planning board issue, or is that?
Yeah, it's a planning board
It's
issue.
a planning board issue.
Size, you guys control
The
size,
size,
and we'll control
they'll
design.
control the mechanics, okay.
The other sign in question, is going to face the Spalding Turnpike. And I wrestle with your sign provisions in the zoning ordinance, trying to make heads or tails out of it. This is the issue I had was that, the zoning, ordinance in question that regulates the sign identifies it as a building identification sign, but that's not, that term is not identified anywhere in the zoning ordinance. There is a term, a building sign, which is identified, which means what you would think it would mean, a sign that identifies the building. So to me, the sign that's gonna be on the side, the west facade facing the turnpike is a building sign. It says Stone Face Brewing on it, and it identifies to the public what the building is. Even more curious to me was that, in the table, it says that a building identification sign can't be any bigger than 4 square feet. So it just seemed improbable to me that would be the case, because if you wanna have a sign on your building to identify it to the public, how is it gonna be only 2 square feet, and people aren't gonna be able to see that? In this case, what Stone Face wants to do is to have a sign on the building on the west facade, which is gonna face the Spalding Turnpike. It's gonna be 196 square feet. And it's gonna say Stone Face Brewing on it.
How big is 196, how many feet by feet?
So,
The only pictures that I have of the sign are right here.
and so it's
So
shown on the very
Is this the
top.
one that you'd be able to see from the highway? This one?
Yes, that's the
Okay,
one.
so that's facing the turnpike, in other words.
So 10 by 20, Ralph, it's probably not gonna be 10 by 20, it's probably gonna be more like
Of
Well,
course.
7 by 30.
Stonefence has me worried, because when they first came to town, they wrapped the building down there in the stone face.
That was a big sign.
That was a huge sign.
Very nice, yeah.
Well, that took up the building square footage of the whole
Yeah, okay.
building.
But the whole building,
That was-
everybody else had to take the signs
That was a
down.
clerical error.
It's dark.
It's, I don't know anyone else's.
So does the plot plan call out the signage on the building?
It does not.
It does not, okay.
So how'd you come up with the sign that size? What was the determination for that?
It's what the architect.
Yeah,
The architect.
the rendering.
So, obviously there's sign issues, right, and I get that. The sign that's currently on your building, how large did you estimate that as an area?
I don't know what that.
So I looked at it and I can see it clearly from the highway and I'd estimate it to be about 3 foot by 10 foot. I'm just saying, so I can see that clearly, so to me, there's a big leap from that to 196. And so with the questions about signage, and this is kinda, to me, shows, that, you know, this is gonna kinda set a standard for how big these signs are gonna be. So I think, you know, I don't know if it's a board issue or it's a,
Well, it's always been an issue with me, but after the town fair sign, I give up. The town fair tire.
Just for clarity, usually architects, and John works with architects a lot as well, is architects will size the sign relative to the mass of the size of the building. So if you have a real small building and you have a huge sign, you know, like the stone face right now, it's a shorter building, long and skinny, and so that sign you're looking at right there is commensurate to that size. So what the architect will do, he'll mass that sign, or he'll size that sign for the mass of the building.
Yeah.
So you have a 2-story building, having an itty bitty sign would look horrible.
it's aesthetics.
Right.
It's not visibility, it's just.
It's several things, so
Right.
also when you're doing signs for trying to get someone to come to your facility, if you're driving on Spalding Turnpike at 65 miles an hour, a 2.5 foot, 2-inch sign, you don't see it, but there is a distance that you can see that sign, and that's how they come up with those size signs. So the 196 isn't an arbitrary number, and I can't tell you exactly how the architect came up with it, but I know that that's because of the size of the building and the sign is commensurate with that.
Thank you. It was more for the board to
Yep.
talk about as far as how big a sign going down the road for a variance or even for the board, how big does that sign become, right, for
Yep.
any other future?
And I
Well,
would
how
say
big
one
does it
thing,
need to be, actually, is more to the point. I mean, I understand you make it
Yeah, well, the max
look
sign.
nice on the building, but what we're trying to do is, obviously, we have a criteria that's much smaller than what you're requesting.
Right.
So if you're looking for a sweet spot, it obviously you need to have it big enough so it's functional, but not.
Right, and I think that's where the architect came up with that number, was the 196. So I think it's 50 square feet is the max, is that what it said, or 40?
So, 4.
Four, that's right, yeah, so,
Identification is 4 square feet.
4 square feet, so, good question, I don't know how to answer other than what I just told you.
the
Sorry.
one thing I would say to the board is that this is a very unique situation. The medical office facility next door didn't need a sign, because you're not gonna be driving down the highway saying, oh God, I need eye surgery, but you might be driving down the road saying, I could use a beer, I could have some, I'd like to have some lunch, so there's a bit of a difference, so, and this is a unique it's a unique location, it's a unique business, whether, the likelihood of something like this ever happening again is pretty slim. I can't say that 196 is the right number, that's not my area of expertise, but it seemed to me that, at least graphically, it looked proportionate to the size of the building, but would 179 square feet work? Maybe, I don't know.
And just to add a little color, we're not interested in, a billboard up there at all. I mean, it needs to be tasteful and appropriate
Right,
to the building,
and it,
because we don't need to scream from the mountaintops. People,
Probably don't even need a sign, right?
possibly,
Quite frankly,
sure.
for people that are looking for.
Yeah, we're trying to meet expectations
Yeah,
and make it
I
look
get
good,
it.
we're not trying to paint the whole side of the building with a logo.
well, I think the sign is very tasteful, colors, everything, excellent. We definitely need to be able to see it from the highway.
Is that actually what we're talking about right now?
Yes, that's exactly right. So if you look at this sign here.
Yeah.
That's the,
Okay,
It's a
but
sunset.
that is it on the building
that's correct.
also?
And I know it's just, and I know it's a stretch, but the hop sign, I guess someone could argue that, is that a sign or is it art? I mean, you stick that on the side of Walmart, you're not gonna say, geez, they had stone-faced beer here, but, so, I mean, I think they're asking for the variance, but I'm not sure it really qualifies as a sign.
So John, was it a stone face or was it art?
I don't know. But again, I think that, I do agree with them that if you look at the proportion of the stone-faced sign on the side of the building, if it was, I mean, certainly it couldn't be big, but if it was much smaller, maybe it might look out of scale, I don't know, but, I don't think it looks out of proportion with that building.
You can also say no larger than.
There you go.
You add just the square footage of the block letters, none of the white space.
So is there a reason why the request for variance 8, you couldn't have just made the signs for the freestanding signs, 50 square feet instead of 56 square feet? I mean, is that any kind of a, can we do anything there to get a little more conformity there? I mean, it seems like a small deal to me.
It's up to you guys, but I think,
The freestanding signs out front, yeah, that was, the reason for that was the proportion of the logo, to get the right proportion of the logo.
To get your hop on there, you mean?
Yeah, it was like the way that the logo fit, the slab, it would just be a wonky shape and size,
And you need two, you need one at the north end and one on the entrance to the building, is that?
Just one in the main entrance, and then the other one, we're just gonna get wayfinding signs, which I don't believe require, wayfinding signs, which don't require a variance, right, so.
Oh,
Well,
you have, no, you're asking for two.
Yeah. Which one?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention to that one, yeah.
so is it gonna be one on the north end and then one on the
But
parking lot?
that sign will be for whatever that building becomes.
Oh, okay, so it's,
Well, so you don't know what that's, I mean, so John brings up a good point. I mean, this board is granting 10 variances tonight. Is it reasonable to, if you don't even know what the sign is there, why do you need a 5 square foot variance?
For the one in, north side?
Yeah, I mean, if this board is handing out 10 variances, could you pull one off the table and just make, I don't think, I think John's point is, I think it's well taken, that 5 square feet is
just
gonna
like
make.
one freestanding sign, if you've gotta have that to make it look right, instead of two freestanding signs.
Yeah, let the
Why
person-
not two
Because that,
freestanding signs 50 feet instead of 56?
because he says, because with the art, work that they have to do and the proportions or
Oh,
whatever,
okay.
it works better if he has one,
Oh,
the way he's asked for, but the other one, I think should be
Gotta
off the
get that
table.
box in there.
meters, really
Well, I think we could just, I would, amend the variance request from two freestanding signs of 56, just to one.
Yes,
The other one would
we
be,
can,
the other one,
scratch the north
yeah,
side.
it would be conforming without a variance, so just, so that'd be a small change. But, I think that's.
We showed them, huh?
Yeah. I'm not trying to fight it, but we wanna try to have some kind of.
So you want to separate that one?
Yeah.
Jane?
Well, poor Jane, she's gotta get
I don't,
She's good.
I need some direction on.
So,
Yeah.
the board is gonna act on variance 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, all at once, Jane. I believe they are, which are
Yes.
all sign variances.
But 7 is
The
gonna
only
change.
variance that's gonna change is variance number 7, which is requested 2 56 square foot freestanding signs where 50 feet is required, no. Yeah, where
Yeah.
50 feet is required, they're gonna allow one sign of,
Variance
it's actually
7
number
is
8.
gonna
It's
change.
actually number 8. Number 8, Jane. Number 8. So they're gonna get one freestanding sign of 56 square feet. And if you wanna say where it is, it's gonna be, on the north and,
Should we reference the sign plot plan?
you can.
Which would,
Is it on there, Bob?
which would call everything out
Is it on
and,
there, Bob?
But it, oh,
This is the sign on the list, so we wanna keep, this sign can go away. So the north one can go away.
No, you don't want the north sign to go away,
oh,
all you
because
want
we
is the
changed.
side.
Yeah, okay.
Before.
Well, there's no
Because we
variance.
changed
I know.
it, that's-
Yes, there is,
Yes,
for
there is.
setback.
You need
Yeah.
a setback.
Oh, I see,
Yeah.
for setback. This is
So-
the sign, unless you wanna give up the setback variance too.
Because he's switched him around,
Why don't we just-
yeah, all right.
So, we're going,
Again,
Do we wanna reference the information they put in front of us as part of the approval, so we know what the stone face is, we know what they're planning on putting on the building?
Yes, I think
Yeah.
that's a good point. And I think you should reference the, I don't know if I can reference the site plan, Bob, that was submitted, but I think that we can say that the 56 square foot freestanding sign will be, located near the, adjacent to the brewery, not the other building. Actually, we can say that, then we'll give them one, if they wanna put it in the other one.
yeah, we're just, all we have to do is just amend, we'll ask them if it's all right to amend their variance request, change request number 8 to allow one freestanding sign on
Yeah.
56 square feet
Sorry,
sign
that
instead of
was-
2. Is that acceptable to you?
That is acceptable.
Sure.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
So they-
So now for that whole group, Alec, you're gonna present the criteria or?
I can do that.
well-paid lawyers.
Okay.
Okay.
Did we get, yeah,
You good?
I got it.
Okay.
I'm up with you.
Okay, and, please bear in mind, as I go through this, my presentation was geared towards the two signs, so I will adjust on the fly here, but, we're requesting a variance from Article 9, Section 5, Table 9-1 to allow, two freestanding signs on the same lot, and that's gonna be one now. And one thing I do want to address is that, in the sign ordinance, there is a provision that says that when you have frontage on more than one street, okay, that you can have, a sign on each street. And so, and you can have a freestanding sign or, so you get, say your frontage, say on Shattuck Way, we're gonna have, we're going with just this one sign here at the entrance to the brewery. And what the ordinance says is that you can have another sign on, your other frontage. And that other sign can be a freestanding sign or an attached sign. And so the way I'm interpreting the zoning ordinance is that the hop sign, which we're asking to go on the north facade attached to the building, is that other sign, that other frontage sign. And I just want to make that clear because it's sort of a technical point. So on the issue of having, if we're gonna drop the second freestanding sign on Shattuck Way.
No, you're just dropping, you're only asking for one area variance for the
Okay.
sign.
One,
Yeah.
yeah.
You're getting both
Yeah.
freestanding
All right.
signs, but only one is gonna be in
Got it.
excess of,
Okay.
only one is gonna be 56
Then
square
I'll
feet.
let it rip.
Okay.
Not contrary to public interest. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest because the presence of two freestanding signs on Shattuck Way will not alter the character of this area or impact public health, safety, or welfare. So I've addressed multiple times tonight the circumstances of this lot, its area. It's got twice the area needed to have a single lot. Its frontage, it's got massive frontage, and it appears as two lots. And what we've heard is that the second freestanding sign is gonna be used in conjunction with the second principal building. And so it makes eminent sense to, in this situation where we have two buildings, And, you know, the public potentially is gonna be looking to find either building, and that, each of these buildings should have a sign so that the public can know which building they're going to. And so there is a public interest in having adequate signage for buildings. It's a public safety issue, so people who are driving to find a location find it without causing an accident. So certainly it's in the public interest to grant the two freestanding signs on Shattuck Way. Spirit of the ordinance is observed. The spirit of the ordinance is to aid the public in finding their destination while also preventing visual clutter. Again, we have a massive frontage on Shattuck Way. There's no danger of visual clutter here, and the second sign is needed for the public to be able to find the other principal building. Substantial justice is done. The substantial justice is that we want the public to be able to find these buildings, and that's a just result. Property values not be diminished. There's no danger of the property values being diminished in this case. We have, you know, vacant properties around industrial, and there's just no likelihood of an impact from the second sign. Which is going to, I mean, this is going to appear as two separate uses, two different buildings, 500 feet apart. The second sign is not going to affect anyone's property value. Issue of unnecessary hardship. Here, literal enforcement of the ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship given the special conditions of the property which give it the appearance of constituting two or more lots. Enforcement of the ordinance here would do nothing to further the objective of preventing the appearance of overcrowding. It simply is just not going to be visual clutter or overcrowding to allow the second sign. The request to have the two signs is reasonable, as there will be two principal buildings on the lot, each of which should be signed for the benefit of the public. And so that's my analysis of the two freestanding signs on Shattuck.
The issues of the setbacks, sort of through that with the building and the configuration of the.
Talking about the setback,
But-
setback.
No, the next thing is to allow the signs to be 20 feet from the front property line where 50 feet is required. If the 50 feet would hopefully put it in the paved area.
It would, and that becomes a safety issue, because the reason the signs are there is to alert the public, and if the signs are pushed back, you know.
I believe, yeah, the medical office building, the sign, did we grant a variance for that?
I think they may have been closer than 20 feet, John.
Yeah.
They're in that
Yeah.
grass median up front, yeah.
So I would say that's,
And just remember also that the Shattuck Way right away is really wide.
yeah.
So it's, and I can't remember how wide,
We're almost 30 feet off the edge of
yeah,
pavement.
it's, I don't know, it's 66 foot wide or 75 foot wide.
Some work needs to be done on the sign, I guess, for these things. And so,
Has no signs on other than freestanding signs on the main building? The main building has no signage on it,
Not on the front facing.
not on the Shattuck,
Yeah.
only on River Road.
And on the, what's the facade, is the north facade? On the north facade is the hop.
Right,
So
right, no,
I
understand that.
Alex's argument is that that's the River Road sign, I mean, it's a,
Yeah, no problem, I was just making sure that there was nothing on the building on the Shattuck Way side that was getting rolled up into this.
the hop silo, aren't you? It's gonna be kinda cool, I mean.
Grain silo.
A grain silo?
Oh.
So the front of the building, there's gonna be a grain silo, hopefully that'll, indicate that it's a brewery to people driving by, so. But not with signage though.
so then the number 8 has just been, we just want a variance for one of these signs to be 56 feet.
That's correct, sir.
56 square feet rather than 50.
Yeah.
And, this, large, huge, building identification sign is, best to, make the building visible from the highway, which seems to be reasonable. And, the north facade, is a aggregate sign area for a sign attached, it says 50 square feet attached. So that's for the hop.
That's for the lot, on the north.
Okay, I think we kind of reviewed where these signs are and why they are there. So if somebody wants to make a motion on these,
We're doing 3,
Six.
4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
no,
6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
we're doing 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. All to do with signs,
The sign thing.
Yes,
I'll make that motion.
all right.
We,
Somebody second, approve.
I'm sorry,
The
is that
variance?
you, Will?
I'll take it.
Okay.
Okay. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
okay.
And at this point, I would either invite anyone to accept the reasoning that they've given, being the engineers that they are, or we could try to do it ourselves and rationalize the need for this variance. If anyone wants to go through the 5 criteria here, it's quite complicated because the situation of the building, but I could, if we need to. By lumping all these together to save some time, noting the fact that there is, as per the approved variance, 2 principal buildings on this lot, and the separation between the buildings is great. I think that, the 2 freestanding signs make sense. And, they need to get relief from the front property line setback, as is, to the rest of the properties on Shattuck Way. Also needed relief from that particular requirement, given the right-of-way width of Shattuck Way, and what I consider to be kind of an unreasonable setback, 50 feet. So I can understand why they need that. They need variance for their square footage on, to allow 56 square feet of sign so that they can put their logo on the sign, one of the signs that they have to indicate how people get into the parking lot. Also, the request on 9 for 196 square foot building identification sign on the west facade is to indicate their location to people on the highway, because the building does not exactly provide access to the highway directly. They need the sign to give the motorist location of the building. And number 10, we request a variance to allow 50-foot square attached sign on the north facade of the building with an aggregate sign area for the attached sign of the building is 25 square feet. That's the one that I believe is going on the sidewalk. Maybe I'm not right on that. This is actually the Hop logo, which is, I think, more of an art than a sign. It's also a good identification feature. It certainly doesn't junk up the appearance of the property. That's my take. Well, anybody else's comments?
I think they needed to be able to, I think they need the signage so that they can, for the businesses.
Are you comfortable with that, what I presented there, or you need to put some more information on the?
No, I just always get scared when I assume things, but, no, as it sits on the proposal here, the applicant's,
Do we need to,
drawing, I'm good with it.
do we need to, reference the applicant's drawing, do you think?
I think in terms of the location of the setbacks, it would, yeah, I mean, I referenced the same plan that Bob did in the previous motion, yep.
Okay, so,
Do we have a plot plan
dated 11/10/21,
Zoning exhibit plan,
zoning exhibit plan,
dated 10.
yeah, 11/10/21.
The motion makers
I'll get it, we do it.
agreeable to that reference?
Yes.
Second's
Got it.
good with it? Okay. So all those in favor of approving the variance for 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No? Good. It looks like that part of the agenda is
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
You do it quick.
Is anybody ready, is everybody, I just looked at the minutes.
Yes, indeed.
Meetings, okay.
Congratulations.
Last meeting, the only thing that happened was my name was spelled differently 3 or 4 times.
Oh, well, you're almost like.
It's gonna be great, it's gonna be great. Thank you.
RNES.
Next meeting, it'll be spelled
Right.
Okay, I have a few corrections
It's
to
your
make.
problem, because you don't own your property, it's in a trust. 'Cause I
Well, how
knew-
was that my problem?
I knew your name was a spellway, so I told Eleanor, I said, we gotta figure out how to spell it. So I look up the tax records, and of course, it's not on there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I Googled you, so I figured it out.
Where?
You weren't supposed to be able to find me, Google, I was supposed to wipe my printout.
Okay, we get quiet and maybe we can do these minutes rather quickly. Just to make a few corrections to the minutes while we're right here.
So,
Okay, page 2, the last sentence. Mr. Wilson asked if the residence was within the 100-foot tidal buffer. Mr. Krebs replied that it was not, but it was a pre-existing condition that was built prior to the requirement. That it was, take the not out of there, it's within the 100-foot tidal buffer.
So should say
Mr.
was.
Yes, that it was, but it was a pre-existing condition that was built prior to the requirement, okay? Okay, on page,
So is the residence correct there for that building? That's one question.
What's that?
We talk about the residence.
the residence,
The residence is a main house, or is that the building? we were-
the building that they're going to attempt to make into another
it's not a residence.
workforce place is a shed.
Yeah,
So it's
that they want
residence,
to convert.
so it's not a residence.
it's not the residence. So
It
you-
should-
Oh, good point, okay. That's what the residence
Are
was
you,
on.
with that,
So,
Okay.
what they were
are
requesting?
No.
we still on a certain page where
I'm
are
incorrect. He's made
Page 2.
he's made a point
we?
that I,
Page 2,
Where it says residence?
yeah, residence, I was incorrect. You leave that not right in there, I'm sorry.
oh,
I made a mistake.
just
Okay,
disregard you.
Yeah, disregard my
Okay, I can
stupid-
do that.
comment. Okay, not gonna a couple more, the problem is
Hold
that.
on, so I'm just disregarding what
Thank
you
you.
said, okay, because everything's fine.
All right, page 3, I don't know what I said, but it didn't make any sense.
Page 3.
That's all right, I just got a question marks at what I said. Oh, yeah, and then, this,
Wait a minute, can we go just back up? So the question I asked was, the building they wanted to convert is within the title buffer, right?
Yes.
So Mr. Krebs replied that it was not,
well, the residence
the residence was not. So,
what does that say? I don't know.
what I asked was, I asked if the ADU that they wanted to put there was in the
Oh,
100-foot title buffer,
and it is.
and the answer was that it is.
It is, oh, okay.
And that's when, John, you went to talk about the DEA and then they had permitted, right?
Yeah, okay, well, it said residence, I thought maybe you meant the house.
Did you get that, Jane?
Well, I'm hearing that conversation, but what am I correcting? Am I correcting
So
anything?
the last sentence, so I asked if the, what do we call it, the structure, the new structure, what do we call it in the building?
You don't want me to call it residence?
Right, it's
No.
not-
So, right, okay, so,
I'd say a barn or storage building.
Storage building.
okay,
within the 100-foot title buffer. And, John, I don't remember if you said this or not, but the building,
It is,
Is
I said it
within.
is, yes.
Mr. Krebs replied that it is within the title buffer.
Oh, that it was a pre-existing condition.
Correct.
Right.
Otherwise, it would make no sense.
okay,
You got it, Jane?
got it,
Okay.
I got a thing on 3, I just wish you'd take it out.
okay.
1, 2, 3, third paragraph from the bottom,
What page, John?
page 3.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Fink also noted that the two dwellings could not be conveyed in sale as two principal lots beyond the existing owner. I don't know what I meant by that, but I don't think it makes any, I should just get rid of it.
So, remove the sentence.
Mr. Fink,
No, I think that's important, John. You were
Yeah.
saying that you couldn't subdivide them.
okay.
I think that's important, so I think what you could change it to say that the dwellings could not be sold separately or subdivided, you don't need, subdivided in the future.
Okay, well, maybe it's okay the way it was.
Well, I think it was an important point.
Oh, okay, it's okay then. And then on page 5. Well, page 5, I just find it, this is like a question for more than a correction, but, 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs up, the bottom part of the paragraph. Mr. Young stated the first unit was an existing residence for at least 30 years, and then others were added over time. On the fourth unit, not being added before 2020, Mr. Young said his father thought it better to ask forgiveness than permission. Mr. Garapi said the lot was conforming, but the non-conforming use was grandfathered. Now I wondered how long it takes to be grandfathered. When you just go ahead and do something.
You can't.
You go ahead and do
The only way to
something.
grandfather something is if it's legally non-conforming, it was built before zone. You can't build something,
Okay, well, I just,
So
he might have
that's-
said that, but it was like the friggin', you just
he probably did.
bulldoze the whole thing and build whatever you want, and his grandfather's like, well, what, that's a hell of a way to do it.
Yeah, no, he probably did say that.
He did say that, okay, but it's, I think,
It's not actually.
Leaves it too.
yeah, all right, that's not really a correction, he said it, so that's what he said. Okay, and that's basically all I've got to complain about.
You ready?
Yeah, oh, you're going to do something?
No, I got it, I
Oh,
was just gonna make a
Jane,
motion that.
Jane,
yes.
there's only just a typo problem on page 6, well, first of all, on all the pages, there's double page numbering, but, and I don't know why, but on the bottom of page 6, the 4th paragraph up, starting out with Edmund Mosier, there's a huge gap on the second line, it says,
Page
and
6.
asked, with a lot of white space, I don't know,
Okay.
see that?
Okay.
I think he's just been picky.
No, I want
She
you
must have hit the
to
tab button about 9 times, I think,
20 times.
yeah,
No, something
I
like
don't
that.
know.
He's still being picky.
sorry, I'll be
They're like
quiet.
those double numbers, those are really weird,
Yeah,
like why, I don't know.
So, anybody else, anything else come before the board?
John, isn't there something?
He's not answering.
Are we gonna make a motion on this first?
I make a
well-
motion to accept the minutes as corrected.
Anybody?
I'll second it.
Oh, too late, Kathy got it.
Good, all right, all in favor, say aye. All on the list? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
so I did talk to Matt today, and Matt, obviously couldn't be here, but I did tell him that we have another, application coming in. I expect it, in the next week or so. It should be an easy one, it's for the residential lot down next to Jeff Hyatt's house on the water. It's a non-conforming lot, has a house, like a camp on it. I can't tell you even what, I think it's off of a little baby road. I
The
can't even
name's
tell.
not familiar.
Jeff Hyde is the chair of the EDC, but,
Yeah, but is it his property?
no,
No,
it
it's
was
his
owned by
abutter, yeah,
it's actually owned by a doctor in Greenland.
yeah.
But, it's a waterfront lot, I think that they vetted before, the ZBA before, they got some relief, I think, to build some retaining walls, they fixed up the waterfront,
Yeah.
and then this doctor decided not to build on it and moved to Greenland. He sold it, a dentist actually in town, Bill Blatt, bought it, and now he's gonna build a house on it, but, there's a non-conforming building on there now, he just wants to reconfigure it, so it should be a relatively simple variance. So that's coming in, and then we have a potential for a couple more, but that's one I know it's coming in, so as soon as we have a schedule, I'll send out, Matt will call everybody, so.
That's not very sick of you, you'll make it over.
No, he had a horrible, he had a bloody nose and he couldn't stop it. And
Oh.
he had such a low, he lost so much blood, he said he couldn't even stand up, he was dizzy, and his wife would not let him come out tonight, so.
I will tell you, I've never talked to anybody that was as apologetic as he was about missing the meeting. He was.
When you talk to him again, tell him there was free beer and burgers tonight.
I will.
He missed it.
I will actually. So, yeah, but he was very apologetic for missing the meeting, and so.
He's like that.
Yeah.
To make a motion to close the meeting?
Make a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
All right.
Thank you. Very much.
You stick pins in our name tags when we're not around.
Yeah. I do, it's all day long, that's all I do. Actually, I forgot we even had them, because the planning board never even uses them, but no one ever comes to our meetings, so it doesn't matter.
Do they have to have them televised or someone saying, what I mean?
Well, the board of selectmen's policy now is that they want every meeting recorded, so that's what's going on, yep.
Is that happening now?
Yep.
Well,